Welcome back. We're going to be chucking around with the 59 Chevy truck step side bed here, putting in the wood rails to hold that, any other kind of metal work that's needed on these things. So hang on and let's see where today goes. All right, over at the welder now. We'll get things ready. Got these copper plates here. I'm going to clamp them up underneath here since the metal's thin and everything. All right, give me a minute and I'll dig out my welding gear and get everything set up. And we'll be back. Back here, see I'm all geared up here. So we'll take a stab at this thing. Not an expert at welding, but I'm pretty good at grinding. All right, gonna do a little bit of grinding on this weld here. Make sure I got everything. I think there's a little spot there, but I'll go ahead and touch it up and see if there's any more spots. All right, let me get a marker. All right, I'll do another touch-up. Just a couple shots on there with the welder. You can see the holes in there. I have a copper plate backed up behind there, and so we'll fill in that metal. We'll replace the rust out with some welded spots. All right, let's get started here. All right, not a very good job there, but I didn't say I was a good welder. All right, I'm gonna fill in this big hole right here, and then there's a screw hole up there on that side. Let's spend some more time trying to, I need to do some more metal work before I attach the thing and get some clamps and stuff gathered up. So we'll probably start that after I get these tacked up. Okay, I'm going to grab the grinder here and knock down some of that weld that I did, so you'll see some sparks flying. Okay, I think the other one has one too, and I'll go ahead and do that, but I won't. Okay, what we're doing here is we're drilling out the old wells on the back side that hold the rails on that the wood attaches to on the inside of the truck bed. And once we're done there, we'll flip it over and pry them off. Alright, the hope is that these things just pop, will pop without too much trouble. Okay, it's time for the big hammer. We'll take and grab a chisel and start knocking these out, breaking them loose. I guess didn't do a good enough job on drilling out, so big hammer. Man, this is taking me a lot longer than I thought it would, but hang on here. We're getting close, I think, to the end of it. A few more seconds for you and probably another hour for me on the video. Alright, I'm going to knock some of this rust off on here and get some big chunks off, and then we'll paint it and let it set up and try to come back and finish up later on after it dries later on maybe. Let's move to some air. All right. right, gonna take a look here, kind of just feel through this. See, there's a few ripples. Gonna try taking them out as best as I can, so that when I start welding the rail on, there's not as much. Two is to do as little bonding as possible on this. Now you see there's some surface rust up here, so I'm going to start pounding a little bit, so plug your ears. I'm using a piece of 2x2 steel for backing the hammer on as my wedge or anvil on there, so that's what I'm beating on underneath there. All right, I'm gonna flip it over. All right, I think I got it close enough the way I want it here. All right, gonna do some polishing here on a couple spots. All right, we'll start setting this up for welding. All right, before I start weld it in there, I'm going to go ahead and put some rust preventive stuff back in here, since it is going to be kind of behind the channel. Hopefully prevent some rust in there, and I'll do some other works when we get a little bit closer to painting. See, I made me a coat hanger here. Some old wire. Had some Eastwood rust encapsulator here. What seems to work pretty good. Used it for other tools, machinery, and equipment out there. This is what I'm using. You can use whatever you want. I like it because I can either spray it in a spray can, brush it in a brush, or put it in a spray rig. So I'm going to just do some spots around here and let that dry while I'm eating some lunch. Alright, so what I'll do here, once this dries, I'll go and clean these holes up with the drill bit, and so I have clean metal. So I'm trying to snap a weld button in there. Alright, it's pretty warm out here today. It's supposed to be close to 90, so this is going to dry pretty quick. There is some humidity out there, but again, I'll go eat some lunch and let this dry, and we'll meet you back. Alright, you can see where I put the paint in. Alright, the paint has dried. And we'll just go and do a little bit of cleanup on these holes here. Make a 1/4 inch bit. I'm cleaning out the holes that were drilled out there in case there had any paint, so I could have metal to metal when I'm welding. get this laid out now. Alright, we're going to get this rail set up here. On here, get a couple magnets to help kind of hold it in place while I'm getting the measurements down a little bit more precise. Trying to clamp everything down so it holds in place nice and tight for when I flip it over and start welding in those little buttonholes that were drilled out. Go grab some clamps. I'm attaching the two pieces of metal by welding through the buttonholes there to tack them together there and fill it in. As you can see, I gathered up just about all the clamps I could find in the shop to clamp it down. It took quite a bit of clamps to hold everything in place so I could start welding. Alright, the wire is getting caught. That's what happens when you have old equipment. We're back, should be back in line here. Moving on. I'm not a good professional welder either, just a sparker. Alright, gonna check the measurements, do some more additional reclamping. One thing after we got to this point, there is a lot of time that was needed for setup and just rechecking the measurements to make sure everything's square and those rails are level as they're moving the metal around, flipping it over and stuff. So that was the hard part. Okay, it's in there. Seems pretty solid. Looks pretty good on there. So on to the other side. Okay, we pulled off the second rail here on there, sanded it up. Now we can put some acetone on here to clean it up, and then put some paint on it on there. I'm not going to go through the welding on that one with this one for you, as it's the same steps as we did on the other one there. And I'll get back with you. We'll see what it looks like when I get it all put back together, and maybe start doing some Bondo on it on there. But thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that like button. Thank you for chucking around. See you next time.